Boom, da-ba-doom, boom, da-ba-doom.
Hey guys, Chris Peach here, and welcome to the Money Peach podcast. Hey, do you remember growing up learning how to handle money? Yeah, neither do I. So that's why we're here today, to make your money fun again. You know, we're going to talk about the principles in life that actually matter when it comes to managing your money in a way that works. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Money Peach podcast. Before we jump into another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast, I want to take a second to talk to you guys about my free budgeting form. You know, the first step to getting on any financial plan is to measure the money. And the only way to measure the money is if you are living on a monthly budget. So after this episode, head on over to moneypeach.com and please download my free budgeting form. There's thousands of people now all over the world who are taking back control of their money using this same form each and every month. The number one habit of highly successful people is they're proactive. So be proactive with your money and get yourself on a budget. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. I'm Chris Peach. This is episode 47. Now, my guest on the show today is also a personal finance blogger and podcaster. His name is Andy Hill, and he runs the Marriage, Kids, and Money blog and podcast. The reason why I want him to come on the show is to first tell you about his debt-free story. He has an amazing story about paying off a ton of debt, but also I wanted him to come on the show because he is a brand new entrepreneur and he shares his story. You see, when you're getting ready or you're just starting off, you got to work your real full-time job and then build your business on the side, which is exactly what Andy is doing. So he's very relatable for those of us who are just getting started, diving into becoming entrepreneurs. So without further ado, let me bring on my guest, Andy Hill. All right, Andy, thank you so much for coming on the show. Super excited to have you on the show because I feel like I'm talking to myself. You and I, we jumped on the phone call before we hit record on this, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, we are very, very nerdy and very, very similar. But we're going to have a lot of value thrown at our listeners today because you have a ton to share, which I'm excited to go over. So real quick, let's jump into it. Tell me who you are. Who's Andy Hill?
My name's Andy Hill. I am a husband and a father to two crazy little kids that I love very much, Zoe and Calvin. And I fancy myself a personal finance money nerd in my spare time.
Okay, so you have your own blog, which we're going to talk about. You have your own podcast, which I've been a guest on. It rocks. We're going to talk about that. But before we go into the entrepreneurial part of the show, which I love doing, I want to take a step back and I want to hit you up on your story because you guys have an amazing story. I think it actually beats out my story, so I cannot believe I brought you on my own podcast to beat out my own story, but it's an amazing story. So go ahead. Let's talk about this. Why personal finance? How did you get involved in a personal finance blog?
Well, about 6 months ago, I was thinking to myself, "Hey, Andy, you've been doing this full-time job, 9 to 5 life for quite a while. I think it's about time you flex your entrepreneurial muscle and use your brain a little bit more and a little creativity." And I thought to myself, well, what's something I'm interested in that I could really provide value to people through a blog or a podcast? And it was personal finance. I actually don't have a background in personal finance whatsoever, but I am so interested in the topic that I've dove into so many books and gone through courses and listened to shows and really just like done some personal financial experiments on myself that I thought there's a lot of things that I could share with the audience that I've started to create. So that's how I got into it.
So it's funny you're not from the financial world at all because I am the exact same way. I mean, if this is your first time ever listening to the show, welcome, but I am actually a full-time firefighter in Phoenix, Arizona. And so, Andy, one of the things that I don't tell people often is that when I started Money Peach in 2015, I didn't tell anybody I was a firefighter. In fact, I purposely went out of my way to avoid it at all costs. So my thinking was, well, if someone found out that I was a firefighter, they're going to think, why would I listen to this guy at all? He's a firefighter. He should be talking about firefighting, not about money. So this was my mindset. Do you have that feeling at all now as you're jumping into the arena talking about personal finance and there's all these people from the banking industry and you're not?
Absolutely. And sometimes I get that physical feedback from people. I had an article that was picked up by Business Insider that talked about our ability to pay down our mortgage, and we are we're very excited about that. But then there were some people that, wrote me on the side saying, hey, do you even have the degrees or the knowledge to even be doing what you're doing? And so you get a little bit of the haters, but I think it's kind of fun that you and I don't have that background or that bias, because it just makes it more relatable, I think. So, yeah, I mean, I've thought about that, but I'm just having too much fun. Just having too much fun trying to provide relatable, real stories to people to help them improve their lives.
I think there's a huge benefit, Andy, when you're not from the financial world. You see, I've dug in as deep as I possibly could go in everything from mortgages to investing to, if there's a book on it, most likely I've read it now. And the common theme is this: really, personal finance is fifth grade math disguised with a lot of big words by the banking industry.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for somebody that went to 5.5 years of night school for my MBA, I can tell you that getting a degree in something is not always required to become an expert.
No, you're
so,
right.
Yeah, I ended up spending about $30,000 in going into student loan debt to get my MBA, and I appreciated it. And yes, I pushed myself and I learned some, but man, you can learn a ton just by picking up some books from the library. I'll just say that.
So most of the entrepreneurs that I've had on the show, and some of the high-powered entrepreneurs that are, they're retired in their 30s and 40s, they're ultra high producers, let's put it that way. But one of the things they say over and over and over again is this. They keep telling me this. They said, education's important. I'm not taking away from education, but learning actually really begins when you graduate high school or college. That's the point where learning actually should begin. And we're trained to believe that as soon as you graduate high school or college, learning now kind of goes on the back burner, and now you go into your career. And so the most highly successful people that I've interviewed on this podcast will all tell you the same thing: is learning is ongoing, and it really kicks up when you graduate from high school or college.
Yeah, I completely agree. I would say, in comparison to the MBA that I got, I would say I've learned more in the last 6 months doing this blog and podcast by speaking to people like yourself, Chris, than I did in my MBA for that 5.5 years.
Yeah, experience. You can go find somebody with experience. It's unbelievable. And what one of the things that I've learned, Andy, just from meeting people myself and then you and I connecting, is all you have to do is ask. I can't believe how many people aren't willing to simply just go out there and ask. And when you ask for help, especially from an expert, two takeaways I have here is, if you ask for help, they will give it to you. People who are successful, they do like sharing while they're successful. But the number two part is the biggest part, is don't waste their time. If they say, I think that you might try this out, and you don't do it immediately, you're wasting their time. And so I think that's why I had a lot of early success, is I plugged myself into a lot of the highest reputable bloggers, podcasters in my niche. And I was kind of nervous. You ask them, hey, could you give me some help? Sure. And it wasn't like, here's a pointer. It's like, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee for 2 hours and let's learn. And then if you come back and say, hey, I actually did what you said, what do you think? They're shocked. They're like, wait, you did what I said? Like, yeah, you told me to. And they're just like, wow, I can't believe that you do that. And so anybody listening out there, find a mentor, pick their brains, but then do it. Do what they tell you to do. At least give them the respect of you attempted or tried or did what they recommended.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's the highest compliment you can give that person that gave you some of that time too, is to come back, to let them know that you actually listened and applied the information that they gave you. I would agree with you. Since starting the podcast and the blog, there are so many people that are open and willing to help if you just ask the right questions.
And follow through.
Absolutely.
So Andy, let's jump into your story a little bit. So did you have a lot of debt that you had to pay off, or how did that work?
Yeah, so my wife and I got married in 2010, so we've just celebrated our 7-year anniversary. When we got together, I brought about $50,000 worth of debt into the marriage. My wife was very smart and frugal and did not bring any debt into the marriage. So the first thing that we wanted to do when we got married was to clean that up, because once we got married, we were very excited about the next step in our marriage, and that was to have kids. So we knew that we weren't just living for today, and we wanted to plan for the future and really think about, hey, what kind of lives do we want our kids to have when they grow up. And we got really excited about some of the books that we were reading and some of the blogs we were following about cleaning up this debt and what that could do, not only just for our lives, but for our kids' lives and their kids' lives, literally altering our family tree as we move forward. So we got really fired up and excited about that. And it also helped to have a double income with no children, which is a great status to have to take advantage of it. So for the first year of our marriage, we had about $50,000 in debt, and that was student loans and a car and a little bit of a home equity line of credit that I like to use as an ATM machine prior to our marriage. We really focused, and we made some changes in our marriage. One was meeting every month and the first of the month to do a monthly budget together and planning out our money well in advance to make sure that we are moving the needle and paying off this debt. So getting together not only helped our relationship financially, but it helped us to dream together and have plans for the future, and it helped us to become closer. So about 12 months later, through these constant monthly meetings and making a plan, we were able to pay off that $50,000 and become consumer debt free. After that, we got really excited about what if we paid off our mortgage? Could we do that too? And that's where we started this new journey that we're headed down.
All right, so I'm going to hit you up with that in a second, but I want to go back a little bit. So you and your wife, you get married. You're bringing $50,000 into the marriage of debt, correct?
Yes.
What did she think of that?
I think that both my wife and I, we grew up pretty blessed that our families gave us some great lives and gave us the ability to grow up with not too much worry. But we both weren't super financially savvy 20-somethings. We both knew, hey, you can have a credit card, but don't carry a balance on it. Or, there's certain types of debt. There's good debt and bad debt. We had some of these things in our minds that we had heard or that we knew were, so we had like the inklings of some knowledge, but getting into the marriage together at that point, I don't think she had, blamed me for going too crazy or making big mistakes. The student loans of getting the MBA, we both agreed that was quote unquote good debt. But as I have some hindsight looking back at it, I don't see any difference between, good debt and bad debt. Obviously, there's different interest rates and things like that. But all in all, she didn't hold it against me too much. But I'm so happy that I found her and that we together worked on it and cleaned it up as our debt instead of Andy's problem, not my problem.
It's funny you mentioned good debt and bad debt, or if there is such thing as good debt. See, for the longest time, Andy, I would probably have jumped right in there and said, nope, there's no such thing as good debt. It's all bad. And this was my mindset because my wife and I, when we got married, we decided to join our forces of stupidity and do dumb things with money for about 4 years. It wasn't like it was the 1 + 1 = 3 synergy. We took our stupidity and we really hammered it away. So we did that for about 4 years until we went completely broke and woke up. And so, from that point forward, the word debt was like, it was as bad as the F word, right? I was like, oh my goodness, it's debt. And so I think I'm starting to open my mind a little bit, just with talking to a lot of different people on this podcast about growing their businesses. And so a lot of the people I've brought in the business told me, like, look, I don't like debt at all, Chris, but there's no way I would have been able to grow my business like I did without taking a little bit of risk and taking out a little bit of debt to get started. And so the way they told me, they're like, look, car debt, like when you go out and you finance a car, that's debt that goes down in value every single day. That's stupid, right? But when you take a mortgage out, usually over the course of 30 years, a mortgage goes up in value. Or when you grow a business, when you take out a business loan, there's higher risk there, right? But you're taking out debt in order to grow your business. So, I don't know if I'm agreeing with it yet, but I will say I am starting to loosen up my clenched fist on this word debt because I do understand it a little bit better now. I'm not saying go out and get a credit card, max it out to start your next business, right? I'm saying slow down, create a plan, and if you need startup money, maybe you need startup money.
Sure. Yeah, no, and I don't hold anybody in a bad way for taking debt. Personal finance is just that. It's personal, right? I mean, so everybody's situation is going to be completely different. I understand, and I've spoken to some people on the show that have scaled multi-million-dollar businesses by leveraging or by taking out, loans. I spoke to a guy who's extremely good at flipping homes, and he couldn't do it if he didn't, leverage those properties. But he's been very successful at it. Since it's personal, I don't think I could do that. It gives me some claustrophobia to think about having 10 or 12 mortgages on homes. I feel like if one bad thing happened, it would topple over me, and I couldn't live like that. And I feel like since I'm a father to two, and I'm the breadwinner now, I feel like I'm in constant protection mode. So having no debt makes me feel really comfortable. So yeah, might not yield me the best interest in comparison to maybe being in the market, been paying off the debt versus putting my money towards somewhere else, but it sure makes me feel good.
Yeah, you can't go wrong there. I mean, when your head hits the pillow at night, you go to sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I've heard stories about business owners on the entrepreneur track that we're talking, business owners who have completely bootstrapped their business and put in a lot of their own personal time and paid other people to help, develop the business without taking out any loans whatsoever. But they're the sole owner of their business and they're now making great money. Yeah, it takes a little longer. Or I've heard for other people that, get loans or work with other partners, investment partners, and you don't own as much as your business, but you got there quicker. So there's just a little bit of trade-off. It's time, your time, or borrowing money, or spending money for that matter.
Sure. All right, and then I want to ask you that follow-up question then, Andy. So tell me about paying off your house this year.
Yes. So we had the opportunity to pay off that debt, and again, we got pretty excited about what it could be like to live without a mortgage. My wife and I, when we got married, we moved into my bachelor pad that I had purchased right after college. And it was this small 1,100 square foot bungalow in a walkable, nice town with a fun area. But as we started to have children, conversations with my wife turned to, hey, what other home could we be purchasing that maybe is not your bachelor pad, that has a little bit more space for the kids? So we had a conversation about upping the ante on our home. We looked at some homes that were maybe 20 minutes away from where we lived in a very nice community with great schools, but the home price and the mortgage that we would have to get would have been pretty large. So I was down for it. We had a great down payment to put down on it, but I really wanted to sort of put some nerdy money guy rules in there to say, yes, I'm all about getting the home, but I really, really want to pay off this mortgage. And my wife got really excited about it as well as we started to talk about what paying off the mortgage could get us down the road as our kids got older and some of those advantages. So we put in a couple rules as we decided to get this home. We decided to get a 15-year instead of a 30-year mortgage. This helped us to pay a lot less interest to the bank over time. We decided that we would continue to make extra principal payments that would hit the mortgage each month. So on average, we've been doing about $500 extra on the principal each month. So in order to do that, we had to dial things back a little bit. Like, I've been packing more for lunch. We don't eat out as much, mostly because we have two small children, which helps out a lot because we used to go out to dinner and go out for drinks with friends, and that's been cut down quite a bit. We don't vacation as much, and if we do, we're driving somewhere. So we go in northern Michigan to visit our family, or we'll drive to different areas of our state to enjoy it, or really just spend some time at home or enjoy the summers here that we have in Michigan. And lastly, we cut the cord on cable TV, and that helped us to cut down our cost as well. So the 15-year mortgage, we've been doing extra principal payments. One little trick that helped me to, combat the mortgage is I get paid 26 times per year as opposed to the typical 24 times, which would be, first and 15th of the month. We just pretend like we get paid 24 times per year. So we take those extra 2 paychecks and throw those at the mortgage. So we're trying to find money as we, in this process to keep combating the mortgage. We Craigslist things, we eBay things. We try to live sort of a an aspiring minimalist lifestyle, I'll say, not having a ton of things around our house. And when we do use it and we're done with it, we find a way to Craigslist it and get it back into our community. Somebody else can use it. We get a little cash. And that helps us feel good and also continues to beat up the mortgage. And I mentioned our budget get-togethers that we do. We continued to do those from our start of our marriage, and that's really helped us to be on point and collaborating this thing. So our balance right now sits at about $31,000. We started off at $200,000 when we got the home in the end of 2013. And by the end of this year, December 2017, it will be $0, which we are very excited about.
That's pretty awesome. But I'm doing a little bit of math in my head, firefighter math.
Go ahead.
And so if we're doing $500 extra on a 15-year loan, there had to have been a couple windfalls to throw some good chunks of money to go from 200 to 31 in about 4 years. Did you have something you sold, something real big, or did you liquidate something?
Absolutely. So there have been some things along the way that have been helping. Like I said, there's some things we've been throwing on Craigslist. So for example, I had a moped at one point. I sold that for $1,000. And instead of, going out and celebrating with the grand, I threw that at the mortgage. Every once in a while through those years, if I have a great year at work, I'll have the opportunity to get a bonus. I'll take that bonus and I'll throw it at the mortgage. It's just when these new pieces of money start to come along in our lives, we have this goal of not having a mortgage, and that's where that money is gone.
Very, very cool. So, and then as far as investing, did you stop investing in order to pay down your mortgage quicker?
No, I know how important it is, especially the amount of it's all about time, right? I mean, the more time you have that you're investing, the more money you'll have in the future. So right now, I'm maxing out the 401k at work, and we've been maxing out both of our Roth IRAs for the past 2 years. And we're hoping to do that again coming this year. So
excellent.
Yeah. So I am not doing any brokerage account or anything like that right now. I'm trying to take advantage of the tax advantaged vehicles that are available to us.
Hey there, do you ever feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck? Are you stressed at the end of every month and you're just praying you're going to make it through to next payday? Or are you tired of trying to figure out this whole money thing alone and you just simply want someone to point you in the right direction? Well, it's officially time to forgive yourself for any of the mistakes that you've made in the past, and it's time to learn a proven system that works, and that's Awesome Money Course. So don't forget to check out awesomemoneycourse.com, my #1 online program for taking you from with your money to showing you how to be awesome with your money. And that's awesomemoneycourse.com. awesomemoneycourse.com.
If you go from a 30-year mortgage to a 15-year mortgage, it would make sense in your head if you just think about it. Yeah, that's a double payment. But really, it's not. It's about, depending on your interest rate, but it's about it's not 2 times your payment, maybe 1.5, maybe a little bit more. So a lot of people don't realize that. I didn't realize that when I first started looking into 30-year, 15 years, and even 10-year mortgages. So Andrea and I, we are on a 10-year mortgage.
Oh, cool.
So when we did it, when you go with usually a 15 or a 10, you get a lower interest rate, so you're going to pay less interest. It pays off in half the time or sooner, which means you're going to be paying much less interest. And the payment is not double, like people would think. It's because of the interest rate, not because of the actual, you're not making double payments. So that's something that people should look into. If you're in a 30-year and you're not happy with your interest rate and you're going to do a refi, I would look at a 15-year or even a 10-year. When we went to a 10-year, we were a little nervous, like, here we go. But, I guess figure it out later is kind of our mentality. Like, we're going to do this and then we're not going to have excuses because we're going to have to do it. Right. So that was kind of our mindset. So, hey, So December this year, you're going to be completely debt free.
That's right. We're very excited about it. The first thing that we're going to do is, grab a cocktail and I'm going to celebrate with my wife. And, I think you and I are both fans of Mr. Dave Ramsey. Yeah. So we think it would be pretty cool to drive down to Nashville and do one of those debt-free screams with him.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're maxing out your Roths, you're maxing out your 401ks, and you're going to have a paid-for house and no mortgage payment. So in the show notes, we're going to have links to your social security number, your ATM cards.
Bring it on.
Yeah. No, good for you guys. That is unbelievably impressive. 35 years old. You don't hear 35-year-olds who are completely debt-free like that. And Yeah, and it's not like, people would say, well, he probably makes $1 million. Andy, you and I talked. Do you make $1 million?
I don't make $1 million. I do well, me and my wife, but I think the average salary, I think, is our average household income's around $50,000, I believe.
Yes, sir.
If there's a lot of people out there that are making some of these smart money moves that are probably listening to the show, Chris, they're probably doing pretty well on the income side, as well as figuring out ways to decrease the amount of expenses in their lives. I mean, you mentioned the 30-year versus the 15-year. When we were looking at our $200,000 mortgage that we were getting, that we had the option to take a 30-year mortgage at 4% versus the 15-year at 3%. You're probably looking at a lower interest rate for the 10-year that you guys got. But like you said, the difference in the payment was only about $400, really. And the majority of that is going straight at the principal. So if we were to pay the full term of a 30-year, of our 15-year versus that 30-year with that option that we had, and it would have been a savings of about $95,000. So that's $95,000 less that you're going to be paying to this mortgage company. So yes, smart money moves like that will help people to do well in their lives financially.
Yeah, amen, man. I love it. I love it. All right, so now I want to talk to you about your blog, because one of the things we had mentioned about 10 minutes ago, we were talking about, going into debt to start a business. And so if you think about it, if you're going out there and you're going to open up a restaurant, right? Mm-hmm. You have to have some kind of capital. And if you don't have capital, you're going to have to go take a loan out. You're going to have to find a space, lease a space, do all the work on the inside, hire a staff, create a menu. You're going to have a lot of work. It's going to cost a lot of money. And the truth is that 90% of startups or 90% of entrepreneurs fail in their first 3 years. And so there's a lot of risk there. But with blogging, the thing I love about online businesses, starting with a blog, is a blog you're in for about $20, right? Besides having a computer, but usually almost everybody at their house now has a computer. So we're talking $20 and you can start a blog.
Absolutely. And we're talking about a debt-free life right here. So, the first business that came into my head was, hey, what's the lowest startup cost business that I could actually really enjoy and utilize my creativity? And that's one of the major reasons that I was interested in both the Marriage, Kids, and Money podcast, as well as the blog that I've been doing for the past 6 months. And it's allowed me to utilize my creativity and really help people as I start to make some moves in this personal finance blogger world we're living. And obviously you've got a lot more experience than I do, and I've really enjoyed listening to your show and reading your blog and figuring out ways that I can advance my business as well.
So let's talk about Marriage, Kids, and Money. One thing I learned about your URL is, do you realize now that A, you have to stay married, and B, you have to have kids? Because you've backed yourself at the corner. You're the marriagekidsandmoney.com. You're the Marriage, Kids, and Money podcast. You're in it, right? You better stay married. You got to tell your wife, hey, this is business now.
This is real. No, and actually, it was designed in that way perfectly because I put marriage first because the marriage is first. I wouldn't have my life without my wife. She is so important to me, and she does come before my kids, absolutely. But my kids come second. I love them to death. I spend so much time with them, and we have so many exciting things that are coming up in their lives. Zoe's just turned 5 a couple months ago. She's graduating from preschool tomorrow, which is pretty exciting, and starting her first years in kindergarten. And Calvin, my boy, just turned 3, going through all the wonderful things that happen when you have a 3-year-old boy learning all things of life. So life is good. And then third is my excitement, my interest in money. So if I do get divorced or I lose my, whatever, I'm not able to be with my kids, I think I will probably be, the last thing I'll be worrying about is the name of my URL.
Yeah, you're not getting divorced. I was just kidding.
No, exactly.
So what's going on? What's the latest and greatest over at Marriage, Kids, and Money? What can we expect from you?
Well, right now I'm doing my best to provide as much value to the readers and the listeners of the podcast over the past 6 months. And that's really my main goal for, I would say, for the foreseeable future. And as product ideas or service ideas pop up, I'll include those, but the main goal for me really is to continue to provide value and give people actionable advice that they can take in their lives to improve their finances. And, you and I talked about at the top of the show that I think it's nice that you and I don't have the extreme, corporate finance background, because I think the stories that you share, the stories that I share are relatable because other people are in these positions themselves. And I try to have a family focused message because I know a lot of people are in our position, man. They've got young children, they're married, they've gotten caught up in life trying to give their kids and their wives and their spouses everything that they're supposed to give them, but they're feeling stressed and overwhelmed and in debt, and they don't realize why. It's because we've been sold this lifestyle of more is supposed to give you more, but it really doesn't. It really doesn't. I mean, find the things in life that bring you joy and obviously pursue those, but we're not going to find joy from more plastic stuff for our kids. I think that's been a lie that's been told to us over the years that some people fall into. And I'm trying to help people to understand that more money doesn't always mean more happiness. Yeah, it helps, but utilizing it in the right way will really help you feel free and enjoy your time with your family.
No, I 100% agree. One of my favorite authors is Seth Godin. And so Seth had this quote that I love, and it stuck with me. When I read it, I was like, oh my goodness, he's exactly right. He says, once you get beyond normal living expenses, just the day-to-day living expenses, you pay your mortgage or your rent, you keep the lights on, you feed your family, and just do the normal necessary expenses. After that, money becomes a story, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you hear that, you're like, wow, money is a story. I mean, after just the bare necessities in your life, everything after that is a story. And so when you think of it that way, it's what do you want your story to be? Do you want your story to be that, I worked so hard to provide a lot of plastic stuff for my kids? Or is it experiences? Or is it something that, none of us even mentioned or even thought about before? Like you said, personal finance is personal to everybody. And I think money is a story, and everybody's story is a little bit different. So absolutely agree with that.
Absolutely. And finding things that bring you joy and bring your kids joy too. If it's giving of your time or giving some of your money to causes that you're excited about, that's part of the reason that we're excited to, pay off the mortgage, is that we can give more as well. I mean, there are things that we found passion around that my wife and I are experiencing through our church that we're really excited about providing that example to our children, that life isn't at all about consumption. It's about giving and being kind to your neighbor and helping people who are in need, and obviously planning for your future and helping your family to win. So with this extra money that we're going to have from not having a mortgage, obviously, yes, we're going to do things that will help us to continue down this path, like looking at, paid for real estate or, continuing to max out our Roth IRAs and our 401k, giving more to charities that we're excited about, increasing our kids' college funds so that they can go to school debt-free, and then obviously have some more fun and vacation more and, create some experiences, like you said, together with our kids that hopefully will last a lifetime.
Right on. All right, Andy, well, that's about all we have time for. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on, telling your story. I'm thinking back right now, and I don't think we've had one guest who is going to actually pay their house off this year. So that is cool. That is absolutely cool. And so we'll have all the links inside the show notes where you can find out more about Andy as far as his podcast, his blog, and I look forward to seeing some big things from you.
Excellent, man. Thank you so much. And yes, I'm glad I'm doing this interview because it'll help me keep honest with actually paying it off by the end of the year. So then we can have some congratulations then.
Public proclamation. It's a huge thing. All right, take care, Andy.
All right, have a good one, man.
And just like that, we wrap up another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. All the show notes, the links, anything Andy and I talked about can be found over at moneypeach.com/session47. That's moneypeach.com/session47. Special thanks to my producer, Steve Stewart, my assistant, Kayla Sloan. Without them, this show wouldn't be possible. We'll see you guys next week, same time, same place, with another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. Take care.
Boom, 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 boom.